Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
And you know Donald Trump has done the unusual when I lead my show with Donald Trump said something over the weekend that not only do I agree with, but is absolute fact, something we need to repeat each day for the next 100 days or so.
A criminal is a criminal, and they generally stay a criminal, and we don't have time to figure it out.
He said that over the weekend at one of his rallies at the Turning Point Action Conference late last week. He also said this.
You're not going to teach a criminal not to be a criminal.
I mean, he's absolutely right. Look at me leading with two Donald Trump clips and saying, yes, he's absolutely right. And I can't agree with this enough. He's the walking embodiment of this. You can't teach a criminal not to be a criminal. I mean, there are a lot of people who are focusing on his quip to Christians. I'm a Christian, he says. I'm speaking of this, of course.
And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Did you hear, by the way, the audience they went from roaring and cheering to, wait, what is he, wait, did he, what? and pundits and those on the left did the exact same thing. Did he just say, in 4 years, we're not going to have to vote? As if to say, maybe we won't get to vote? No. Listen, I understand that folks want to grab onto any time he says something outlandishly bat stupid that one might infer means democracy is over. I get it. I get the but that's no, I don't think that's what he was saying there. I really don't. And this is where we get into the quirkiness of Donald Trump in our political lexicon anyway. He says something that doesn't make any real sense, and it has to be parsed out by his acolytes after the fact. They all have to race to cable news or race to their keyboards to get on social media to, well, what he really said, that's the man who means what he says. I like him. He means what he says. He's, no bull, except he has to have an army of folks come out afterwards and say, well, what he really meant was. I actually don't think he meant in 4 years, you're not going to get to vote anymore. I think what he meant to say was, vote for me one more time. It's the last time I get to run for office, and I really don't care what you do in 4 years because this is the last time I get to vote. That's what I really think, because he's just that selfish, that narcissistic, that so self-absorbed and self-centered that I don't think he cares. Like after 2024, and he's exhausted all of his ability to run for office, I just don't think he cares anymore. And I think he's telegraphing that. He's telegraphing that, and has all along since he announced his candidacy, that he's just running to protect himself. And he's willing to throw out any policy idea, few as there may be, thin on substance as they are, to try and cobble together enough applause that in his mind he thinks, well, this is going to be enough to get me reelected, and then all the court cases go away. He thinks all the court cases go away. I'm good. Except the state cases aren't going to go away, and the repercussions of those cases, they're not going to go away either, whether it be after Election Day or in 4 years.
A criminal is a criminal, and they generally stay a criminal, and we don't have time to figure it out.
Well, they do generally stay a criminal, even if they serve in the Oval Office. And actually, we do have time to figure it out. We have a little more than 3 months, about 100 days, as the voting public to figure it out. We can't count on our justice system to do that because it is so gummed up in all of these tactics over the last 2 years to gum it up on purpose so that he can continue to run for office and hope, against all hope, that he somehow wins and can wipe away as many of the charges as is possible and at least run out the clock on the state cases that he cannot avoid, whether it's in 100 days or 1,400 days. Speaking of Christians, American Christians, evangelical Christians, the kind that Donald Trump absolutely adores.
My beautiful Christians, I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian.
By the way, who says that? I'm a Christian. Who says that? And they lap it up. And you can't tell me they absolutely to their core believe that he is in his heart and mind a Christian. Like, listen, maybe nearly getting shot at. I mean, that ear looks really good. Did he get hit? Maybe, and I know what the Secret Service FBI did. But that ear looks really good. What was the queen-size pillow bandaging for? I'm trying to understand what that was actually for, other than, I don't know, television? Anyway, who says that? Who says, when speaking to a denomination, I'm one of you, when... I mean, who are we trying to convince here? Listen, I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church. I was surrounded, at least on Sundays, by Christians. A lot of Sunday school. A lot of sitting in the choir. Yeah, believe it or not, I was in the choir. Literally was in the choir. Mr. Bill was Sleepy Bill. Mr. Bill would sit in the corner in the choir. His lovely wife and he were both in the choir. Ladies were in the front row, gentlemen in the back. Mr. Bill would sit in the back and in the corner, sort of hidden by the pillar that separated the dais and the choir. We would be behind our pastor. Anyway, Mr. Bill would sit in that corner and let that pillar shield him from the audience as he would get a good nap in. Anyway, I sat through a lot of Sunday school, a lot of sermons over the years growing up in the Southern Baptist Church. Donald Trump exhibits nothing I recognize by way of Christianity. Although I must say, I shouldn't question his Christianity. We're also taught that. I mean, that's not what they do. They question Joe Biden's Catholicism because politically he's managed to build a firewall between his personal religious views and those that he believes are constitutional and or should be. So I'm not going to do like they do and say, I don't believe that guy's a Christian. But I am saying, who says that?
I'm a Christian.
It's just, dare I say it, weird. It's weird. Also weird, following J.D. Vance's social media. Why did he do this behind-the-scenes video? This is so weird.
Hey guys, J.D. Vance here at Radford, Virginia. I thought I'd take you behind the scenes a little bit. When you get to an event, they've got a ton of crap for you to drink and eat. You got 3 bottles of Diet Mountain Dew, about a dozen Snickers, a bag of chips. If I ate even half this stuff, of course, I'd balloon up like crazy. This is the energy that powers the presidential and vice presidential campaign. Of course, I'm honored to be supporting President Trump. I'm honored to be his running mate. If you want to help us, chip in $5, chip in $15 to get the message out and to get people to the polls. This election is so important. Your resources help us do the things we need to win it.
I'm confused. Are folks going to send you money because chips and Snicker bars and Diet Mountain Dews? I'm trying to understand the correlation with that. That was weird. Also, his I like Diet Mountain Dew, by the way. His Mountain Dew quip. Remember that? That was weird.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good.
Weird.
I love you guys.
Weird. Just weird. By the way, Vivek Ramaswamy is not happy with us pointing out how weird these guys are. He tweeted earlier, their weird argument from the Democrats is dumb and juvenile. This is a presidential election, not a high school prom queen contest. It's also a tad ironic coming from the party that preaches, quote, diversity and inclusion. Win on policy if you can, but cut the crap, please. I'm sorry, this man has been the fervent supporter since dropping out of the race to try and take the nomination himself earlier this cycle of Donald Trump, the guy who uses words like lying, crazy, sleepy, crooked, horseface, Pocahontas, dumb as a rock. You're going to sit here and tell me that we need to elevate the dialogue? You're going to tell the left they need to elevate the dialogue?
And I can hit the crap out of the ball. I'm good. I shoot good scores. And when you win a club championship, that means you can play under pressure. You can ask a lot of the people up there, like Brett Baer. Brett Baer's a good golfer. Ask him, can Trump play? But, I have 50,000 people. Elvis didn't have 50, and he had a guitar. I had no guitar. I didn't have the use, right? Elvis had a guitar. He had a lot. We love Elvis, right? But he had a guitar. I don't have a guitar.
So can we not start talking about, well, if we're not going to talk about how weird this guy is and his running mate, can we talk about cognitive decline? Should we not be talking about his age and cognitive decline? I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me that the nominee for the Republican Party is in steep and cognitive decline. Is that how this works? Is that how we do it? Is that on the table? Wait, it's off the table now? We can't talk about cognitive decline and old men running for office anymore? Yeah, I love that Vivek Ramaswamy wants to goad us into elevating the dialogue away from the weirdness of Trump Vance so that we can have some substantive policy discussion like Kamala Harris's laugh.
From the moment we take back the White House from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala, I call her Laughing Kamala. You ever watch her laugh? She's crazy. You can tell a lot by a laugh. No, she's crazy. She's nuts.
Which begs the question, has anybody ever seen Donald Trump laugh? Has anybody ever heard Donald Trump laugh? Is it not, keep going back to this word, is it not weird that no one's ever seen Donald Trump laugh? Not chuckle, not while on stage on the dais, laughing, I guess, at himself. I'm talking like just a good, full-hearted laugh. I mean, even when he did the Comedy Central roast, he just sat there and smirked and but did he laugh? I mean, there was some pretty funny shit said about him at that thing. Did he laugh? Dare I say I find that kind of weird in and of itself. You know what? The whole segment really kind of fell off the rails here. I really just wanted to start with what I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with Donald Trump on.
A criminal is a criminal, and they generally stay a criminal, and we don't have time to figure it out.
Except we have about 100 days, a little more than 3 months, to figure out the path for keeping that man out of office. And polls seem to show it's now a race. We will go through some of the polls, which, by the way, you have likely voter polls, which I think are telltales. And with literally just a week, we're seeing some tightening at the national level, within swing states as well. And I predicted this last week, favorability numbers. They're ones, even President Biden is enjoying a favorability bounce. We'll dive into those in just a few minutes. This is The Ron Show on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, wherever you podcast. Follow The Ron Show on your preferred social media platforms. That would be at Ron Show ATL on the Twitter X platform, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. Georgia polling has seemed to show that Georgia, which I think a lot of folks doubted was in play before, is back in play. The most recent Emerson College polling from Emerson College and the Hill shows that there's a 47.7 to 45.5% within the 3% margin of error gap between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. On the On Point Politics SoCal Research Georgia survey showed Trump ahead 50 to 46. There was new polling done by Landmark Communications. This is tight, y'all. 48 to 46.7, well within the polls. 5% margin of error. And you know that Democrats smell blood in the water when they send a governor from a red state like Kentucky to Forsyth County, Georgia. That Forsyth County, Georgia. Here is that governor, Andy Beshear, who admittedly is a vice presidential potential. He's being vetted by Kamala Harris's campaign folks to be her running mates. Speaking to Chris Jansing on MSNBC yesterday.
Saw in a state that, in a county this morning, that went 80% to Romney and I think about 70% to Trump, where 300 plus people fired up and ready to go that believe in the vice president. And they believe in her for a number of reasons, one of which is she is a champion for reproductive freedom. You look at the fact that my mom, my daughter, and my wife had a constitutional right ripped and stripped from them. I think it's important that we strip Donald Trump from the chance to ever have a second term.
I mean, he doesn't lack for enthusiasm or style points. He's got a lot to check off the box there. A little clip of him closing out in Forsyth County yesterday. And listen to this crowd, y'all. This is in Forsyth County, Georgia, need I remind you.
Are you ready to knock the doors? Are you ready to make the phone calls? Are you ready to vote? Are you ready to beat Donald Trump? Are you ready to beat J.D. Vance? Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris, President of the United States of America? God bless. Thank you all. Let's win this race.
If you had told me, more than 300 people, if you had told me there were 300 Democrats in Forsyth County, no, I mean, I know that there are more than 300. In fact, the Forsyth County Democratic Party, God bless them, man. They're up there actually doing the work. They're doing the sort of thing that I think Howard Dean used to talk about when he was talking about a 50-state solution. Stop acting like there are areas of the country that just are no man's land, are radioactive. You can't go there. You'll die. You'll get killed. Go there and get. I said this when Stacey Abrams was running in 2022, right? That's all fine and well that you want to stay in the blue bubbles. You want to stay in Atlanta and Columbus and Augusta and Athens and Savannah. But get out there and win over some votes in some places that you don't think you're all that popular, or maybe you can't win the county. But guess what? You don't have to win Forsyth County. You have to win Georgia. And if you get more votes in Georgia, you can add to what you already have in Georgia in a razor-thin margin, and that's how you win the whole state. Andy Beshear goes to Forsyth County, Georgia. I don't know if he chose the spot or if the state Democratic Party or Kamala. I don't know who chose Forsyth County, but that's what you do. Yes, I'm thrilled to see this. Again, do I think Forsyth's going to flip blue? No, but if you had told me, say in the 1990s, the late 1990s in Cobb County, the home of Don't Say Gay, remember that? They had, speaking of all the Olympic kerfuffle over, they had venues pulled from Cobb County because Don't Say Gay was being written into legislation by the county commission back then. They did not want any gay business or, yeah, that's the same Cobb County now that has gone for Stacey Abrams twice, went for Hillary Clinton, went for Joe Biden, will obviously go for Kamala Harris in this election cycle as well. Cobb County used to be no man's land, and I love to see that Democrats are starting to finally see that you can go outside your liberal blue bubble and win over a handful of votes and start growing that coalition. Forsyth County will not stay red forever. Trust me, it's trending the exact opposite direction. And a brilliant brushstroke, whether it was Andy Beshear that made the decision, the state or the DNC or the Harris campaign to send him to a red pocket. Got to do more of that. I also want to talk about favorability because there's been a wild jump in favorability for Kamala Harris. There is a precipitous deficit for Donald Trump when it comes to favorability. That remains, and I don't really foresee that changing. On par, by the way, with now where President Joe Biden is, and I predicted, by the way, his favorable, unfavorable. I don't think I did this on. Did I say this on? I don't think I said this on the air. There is obviously a gulf for Joe Biden to have overcome as well, which I think played a large role in his decision not to continue being atop the Democratic Party ticket. I think he saw the numbers. He saw they weren't changing. He saw all the things that were going in the opposite direction and said, this isn't going to happen. Oh, yeah, and the donor saying, well, we're not giving money. Obviously, they held off on the money because what are we at, $200 million in a week now? Yeah, there are favorables and unfavorables that I really want to focus in on, and some on the issues as well that'll show where Kamala Harris has to continue making inroads on, but where she's already well ahead of Donald Trump as well. The favorable, unfavorable part, though, wait until I read for you these numbers, where Kamala Harris was, and by the way, I'll just go ahead and tease you, it was on par with where President Biden is and where her combatant, former President Donald Trump, is. And now, just in 1 week, even with the attacks on her left and borders her favorables are now in the positive and ahead of President Biden and former President Donald Trump. We'll dive into those when the Ron Show returns here on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, or wherever you podcast.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So we had been hearing before President Biden dropped out that the contingent of voters that folks were most concerned about were the double haters, the ones who hated both candidates in this mostly binary option for President of the United States for the November 2024 election. The double haters were a growing contingent. It was like upwards of 15%, right? And that's not necessarily, that's not a thing anymore, actually. And I'm going to, first of all, throw it to the super dreamy, handsome Gio Benitez, who's got a man, who spoke to the new ABC News Ipsos poll with a contingent of experts.
Bring in ABC's political director and Washington bureau chief, Rick Klein. Rick, good morning. Thank you for being here. We have a new ABC News Ipsos poll coming out this morning. What does it tell us about Vice President Harris's debut as a presidential candidate?
Yeah, good morning, Gio. What a difference a week makes. 7 days ago, we still had Joe Biden, a very unpopular president, running for re-election. Now, in the space of just a week, Kamala Harris has turned her numbers around substantially. Her favorability rating up 8 points in the space of a week. She is now viewed more favorably than unfavorably, which is rare these days. And just among independents, we saw a 16-point swing. A week ago, 28% of independents saw her favorably. Now it's 44%. So this is clearly an early honeymoon period, but it's also clear that the presidential race has essentially reset at this stage.
Absolutely, and we will see if that honeymoon lasts. And Rick, what about Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance? We just heard Mary Alice. He's making a lot of news, too.
Yeah, and of course, just a week ago, J.D. Vance was fresh off being named at the convention, and Donald Trump was riding something of a hot streak. There was a wave of good sentiment toward him coming out of that convention and that assassination attempt. We saw Trump's favorability rating a week ago up as high as 40%, its highest in 4 years. Now it's back where it has been for a while, back in the mid-30s. And as for Vance, he is deeply underwater in terms of favorability. His unfavorable impressions have shot up over the course of the past week as more information has come out around his background and his backstory. A lot of consternation in Republican circles about his debut, but as I said, it's just getting started.
But wait, that's not all. More to glean from this polling that I'm sure has MAGA Nation and the Trump-Vance campaign quite concerned. Reading from this article that I'll share in the show notes at ronshowetl.com. You know I do that. Harris has an edge over former President Donald Trump when it comes to how much enthusiasm Americans feel for them as nominees. 48% of Americans say they would feel enthusiastic if Harris becomes the Democratic nominee. Fewer, 39%, say they are enthusiastic about Trump being the Republican nominee. Enthusiasm for Harris as the Democratic nominee peaks amongst Democrats, obviously 88%, and Black Americans, 70%. 49% of independents express enthusiasm for Harris, whereas only 31% of independents are enthusiastic about Trump. We all know independents are where the margin is going to shift in a presidential election. Trump's favorability rating dropped slightly from 40%. We mentioned that, or they mentioned that before. Let me get to where this actually shows where even Joe Biden got a bump. Wait, first, before I get there, let me mention, we talked about the double haters. I was right, it was 15%. Driven largely by an increase in Harris favorability, the proportions of Americans who dislike both nominees, Harris and Trump, have now been cut in half to 7%. Now, as for Biden, I mentioned, I must have told a friend of mine this last week. I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe Biden get a favorability boost. Well, he did. He got a 5 percentage point favorability boost from dropping out. Oh, man, bless his heart. And I think once we have the opportunity to sort of fet Joe Biden at the Democratic convention, I think you're going to see even more of that. Listen, George W. Bush, people wax nostalgic for the George W. Bush presidency. His favorability numbers continue to climb the further we get from his presidency. Anyway, according to this article, following this sudden announcement of exiting the presidential race, Biden's favorability, though still low, has improved to 37%. By the way, that is still higher than Donald Trump. A 5 percentage point increase from the prior week with an unfavorability rating of 50%, a 5 percentage point decline from last week, according to the ABC News Ipsos polling. As you heard in the ABC News clip, J.D. Vance's favorability is not good. Although his unfavorables are still below 50%. Most people just don't know enough about him. The Ohio Senator's favorability rating in this article is at 24%, similar to his 23% rating in last week's poll. But the proportion viewing him unfavorably has increased from 31% last week to 39% now, according to the poll. But has America seen him behind the scenes looking at the Diet Mountain Dews and Snicker bars and potato chips? Because clearly that'll move the needle. Okay, more polling to dive into. According to Atlas Intel on the issues, Americans trust Kamala Harris 48 to 45% on cleaning corruption in government. Guarding democracy, Kamala Harris, 51%, Donald Trump, 45%. That this is even within that range is startling. On education, Kamala Harris, 53%, Donald Trump, 43%. On health care, Harris, 53%, Donald Trump, 43%. Now, make no mistake, there are issues where Donald Trump actually leads Kamala Harris on, let me find those, immigration, 50 to 44. The Hamas war, 46 to 41. Inflation, this is actually a dead heat, 48-47. The national debt, Trump, 48-45. Again, these are Atlas Intel A+ favorability poll responses. But you can see here, the national debt, I don't know, why do the American people trust either party to deal with the national debt? Republicans love to politicize it, but when they're in office, they do absolutely. In fact, they're worse about it than Democrats are. Inflation, again, that's a dead heat. And I'm starting to think now, because Americans are seeing that inflation is kind of getting back to normal. And whose watch did that happen under? That inflation is going to be less of a political issue than it was maybe 9 months, a year ago, 2 years for sure. Now, as for the horse race for the vice presidential nomination, I'm a little hesitant to even throw my support or say, I think that person's going to be it, because I have lots of reasons for liking them all. I happen to think the smart choice, well, I don't even know if it's a smart choice, but I happen to think that the smart choice for the ticket, anyway, is Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. Common sense guy, military background, American astronaut, devoted husband to a mass shooting victim in Gabby Giffords, who is a walking testament to the need for gun reform and expanded background checks, et cetera, and so on. I think Mark Kelly can speak to our immigration woes, issues at the southern border, in a way that can kind of insulate Kamala Harris from the sort of blowback that the right's been trying to lobby at her. She's a border czar. She's not the border czar. She never has been a border czar. And actually, as I pointed out last week, where she was tasked with tackling immigration concerns, notably the Northern Triangle of Central America, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, we actually have seen tangible results, a steep drop in encounters at our southern border from those three countries that she was charged with dealing with the root causation. But you see, you can't put that on a bumper sticker, so it just doesn't resonate with enough American voters, in my opinion. Yeah, I like Mark Kelly because I think he makes a lot of sense for the ticket. Andy Beshear, you can make a strong case for him. Although, selfishly, I know that like saying, "Oh, I want this person on my ticket," doesn't bring the electoral votes from their state in. But Mark Kelly does come from a swing state that's swung bluer. I think slightly bluer than we are here in Georgia, honestly. But Andy Beshear's not going to bring that. He's not going to bring Kentucky. He may stunt some of the Appalachia nostalgia that JD. But again, JD Vance is not bringing much to the ticket right now. Josh Shapiro, swing state governor, very popular in that state. I could see that. He's also a Jewish American. I could see that. I'm going to tell you, the person who to me feels like the most plain-spoken guy, the guy who kind of resonates with the kitchen table issues American. He ain't flashy. He ain't sexy. He's not going to be making women swoon. It's not Pete Buttigieg. No, I like Pete Buttigieg too. I think Pete Buttigieg would be fantastic. Man, put him on the debate stage next to JD Vance, and oh my gosh, someone call the cops. There's a crime happening before our very eyes, an assault. No, I actually, and this has been like over the last 3 or 4 days. I think it's Tim Walz. Yeah, the Minnesota governor. This guy's playing. I could get. Listen, my dad doesn't vote, and he probably watches more Fox News than he ought to. My dad, comes away with some of the same opinions that someone who just kind of casually follows American politics might. I could get my dad to vote for Tim Walz. You know why? Listen to this.
But today I have probably a more important job. My job today is to be dad to a 17-year-old daughter named Hope, who's here. And Hope and Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, "Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at. We won't do it by dividing us. We will doing it by bringing in responsible gun owners from the side to make this happen. Give me the opportunity to earn your endorsement. We will make these things happen in Minnesota and make sure that this state continues its long progressive tradition. Thanks for having me.
By the way, that was not him running, for vice president or seeking a nomination for vice president. That was him when he was running for governor. Dude's a former football coach. He knows how to give the locker room speech. In fact, speaking of football coach, this was from his campaign, a campaign ad that they ran when he was running for governor.
It's halftime in Minnesota. Time to regroup, refocus, and choose a plan that tackles today's toughest challenges. Some leaders retreat. They say our only choice is to cut back. They point fingers, offer shortcuts, they try to divide. But Minnesotans know better. The women and men who came before us carved out a life in the unforgiving North. They survived by investing in the future, teaching their children to build communities that last. Immigrant farmers, lumberjacks and miners, champions of freedom and refugees, and people who've been here all along, the Anishinaabe and the Dakota. Our blood saved the Union at Gettysburg. Our iron forged the tanks that liberated Europe. Our farmers sparked a green revolution that fed the world. Our imagination transformed medicine. What many describe as the Minnesota miracle, that's just what we do here. We've proven that when we come together as one Minnesota, we can do anything. I've seen it. I've led soldiers. I've taught students. I've coached state champions. We'll win by doubling down on the next Minnesota miracle, inspiring our kids to dream, setting lofty goals, and lifting each other up to accomplish them. Because if Washington won't lead, Minnesota will. In this state, we don't fear the future. We create the future. And when we stand together, we win. It's halftime, Minnesota. And what happens next is up to you.
Who wouldn't run through walls for that guy? I want to put my football helmet on and shoulder pads and go out there and win the second half. And this guy speaks clearly about equality in ways that we've seen so much pushback against diversity, equity, and inclusion from the right. Corporations are waffling on this now. He speaks from a football coach, plain-spoken point of view, not drunk uncle at Thanksgiving point of view, but just from a point of view that I think resonates with the average American voter. Listen to this.
Why is it so hard to understand? When somebody else gets them right, it's not like a damn pie. Oh, somebody got a bigger piece of pie. I don't get it. Rights aren't that way. There's enough for everybody. There's enough for everybody to be included. Same thing with jobs. Same thing with housing. Same thing with health care. So, you saw it. We are not going to allow them to make the case. Yes, they're a threat, but we're not going to stay in their frame. We're not going to stay where they're at. We're not going to play their game. We called them out for the weird nonsense that they believe, and we presented a different argument to the American public. One where everybody matters. One where we can achieve. One where we solve problems. And what's so great about this is, we know here in Minnesota, that message works. We are the majority. That's why they shrink the vote. That's why they make it harder to vote. That's why they try and bring fear. And that's why they try and get you to the point where you're pessimistic. And what difference does it make?
If the Harris campaign announced that Tim Walz is their choice for vice president, I'm fully behind this. I'm very excited about this. Jake Tapper has some concerns, however, but even then, Tim Walz responds, chef's kiss.
But you've legalized recreational marijuana, you passed universal background checks on guns, you expanded LGBTQ protections, you implemented tuition-free college for low-income Minnesotans. There's free breakfast and lunch for school kids. Do you think your record is an asset to the ticket, or would it risk fueling Trump's attacks as you being a big government liberal?
What a monster. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn, and women are making their own health care decisions. And we're a top 5 business state, and we also rank in the top 3 of happiness. Look, they're going to label whatever they're going to label. He's going to roll it out, mispronounce names, to try and make the case. The fact of the matter is, where you see the policies that Vice President Harris was a part of making, Democratic governors across the country executed those policies, and quality of life is higher, the economies are better, all of those things. Educational attainment is better. So, yeah, my kids are going to eat here, and you're going to have a chance to go to college, and you're going to have an opportunity to live where we're working on reducing carbon emissions. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have personal incomes that are higher, and you're going to have health insurance. So if that's where they want to label me, I'm more than happy to take the label.
Oh, God. They should just be followed up with them. Tim Walz and I approve this message. This is The Ron Show. Back after this on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, or wherever you podcast. Just a few more minutes listening with me, and I do appreciate that. Show notes at RonShowATL.com. Each and every episode. The crazy cat lady thing has not gone well for J.D. Vance, by the way. So, this was back in 2021. He was on with Tucker Carlson, and when he made this quip...
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
Ooh, Pete Buttigieg, by the way, has 2 children. Kamala Harris, a stepmom, I believe, to 2 children as well. So I'm sure J.D. Vance, when he went on Fox News to speak with Trey Gowdy, thought, oh, this is going to be friendly territory. And yet J.D. immediately faced with this.
I've heard from many women, most of whom are conservative, and they would very much like to vote for President Trump and you, but, Senator, they are disappointed. So nuns and priests aside, do you agree that there are people who very much love this country and are invested in its future, but they also happen to be childless?
Oh, of course I believe that, Trey. And if you look at the full context of what I said, it's very clear the Democrats have tried to take this thing out of context and blow it out of proportion, which is what they always do, Trey, because they don't have an agenda to run on themselves. And if you look at what the American people are most concerned about, Trey, it's not an out-of-context quip that I made 3 years ago. It's the fact that Kamala Harris, the border czar, opened the American southern border. It's the fact that the Democratic Party has become explicitly anti-family in some of their policies. In fact, you just heard Kamala Harris in a Surface clip recently talk about how it was a bad idea to have kids because of climate change anxiety. So really what I'm trying to get at here, Trey, is that it's important for us to be pro-family as a country. Of course, for a whole host of reasons, it's not going to work out for some people. We should pray for those people and, of course, have sympathy for them. I still think that that means we should be pro-family, generally speaking, as a party. And I think that our country has become particularly hard for parents, especially under the policies of Kamala Harris.
So he doesn't like that something he says he believes was taken out of context, but then he turns around and takes something that Kamala Harris said about children and climate change completely out of context. You can't make this crap up. Trey Gowdy, though, is not done. He follows up.
All right, Senator, I want to ask you about the other part of that again is making news, but I'm not asking you because it's making news. I'm asking you more because people are calling me who very much would like to support you and President Trump. Dr. Connie Rice does not have children. Neither does my friend, your colleague, Tim Scott.
Cat ladies.
George Washington did not have biological children, and neither did James Madison. So I think you will agree with me that direct offspring are not necessary to be fully invested in the future of this country.
Of course not, Trey. I do think that being a parent actually has a profound effect on somebody's perspective, and we should honor and respect that. But there are a whole host of people who don't have children for a whole host of reasons, and they certainly are great people who can participate fully in the life of this country. And that's not what I said, Trey. If you look at what the left has done, they have radically taken this out of context and, in fact, aggressively lied about what I've said.
Which is ironic because he radically took out of context anything that Kamala Harris did with regards to immigration. But, you know, we've covered that ad nauseum. Chelsea Handler, cat lady, she ain't happy with J.D. Vance either. Love this. Take a listen.
Oh, hey, as you might have heard, Donald Trump's running mate and future star of his own Dateline episode, J.D. Vance, is ruffling quite a few feathers this week.
We're effectively run in this country by a bunch of childless cat ladies who look at Kamala Harris. The entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
Listen up, you wingnut elegy. This country is still controlled by men in systems that were set up by men that are carefully crafted to continue to benefit men. So to put it in women-hating terms, you'll understand you're being hysterical. But let's be clear, there's no correlation between childless people and the presidency. For example, our very first United States president, Mr. George Washington, didn't have children. Yep. In fact, he had 2 stepchildren. That's right. Just like someone else I know. And to your point about Kamala not being fit because she's not a mother, I'd like to remind you that no president in the history of the United States has ever been a mother. But maybe if she had 5 kids with 3 different men and a scandalous affair with a porn star and was convicted felon, that would be more palatable to Republican men. I mean, my God, are we tired? You sad, diet, Mountain Dew drinking, couch humping, dolphin porn aficionado, all of us childless cat and dog ladies are going to go from childless and crushing it to childless and crushing you in November. And before you tell me he didn't really a couch, spare me. I grew up in New Jersey in the 80s where everyone had a couch in their basement, and I know a couch when I see one.
Oh, man. Let's finish it with Tim Walz again.
These are weird people on the other side. Yes. They want to take books away. They want to be in your exam room. That's what it comes down to. And don't, get sugarcoating this. These are weird ideas. Listen to them speak. Listen to how they talk about things. Listen to how your previous guests were right. Like you said, they've told them that they shouldn't talk about race. They can't help it. It is built into their DNA because there is no plan. There's no health care plan. There's no health care plan. There's nothing to do on this. They want to take away our alliances and leave Russia to do whatever they want. Look, they are bad on foreign policy. They are bad on the environment. They certainly have no health care plan. And they keep talking about the middle class that, as I said, a robber baron real estate guy and a venture capitalist trying to tell us they understand who we are. They don't know who we are.
And it's speaking of immigration, they had a chance to deal with immigration and they whiffed on it. Yeah, I think I'm warm to Walz. From the windows to the walls. We've got to figure out some way to do that. Anyway, it's going to do it. Show notes at RonShowATL.com. Replays 5 to 6 p.m. on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com. All day on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com and via podcast. See you tomorrow.